Well, hello everybody and welcome to the Memorial Garden. We're about a minute out from the start of our beginning event for the Queen's Jubilee, and we're actually really pleased with the turnout we've got tonight. So if you've still got time to come and join us down at the Memorial Garden, please do. Otherwise we'll continue to live stream for the rest of the event. As you can see, our Romanby flagpole is up, and of course tonight we will be doing the dedication in honour of Her Majesty the Queen's 70th Platinum Jubilee. If you can't make it for the start of the event, a little bit later on we will of course be lighting the beacon along with all the 3,500 plus beacons that will be lit across the country.
Hello, good evening everybody. Thank you all for turning out this evening. The weather has just about been kind to us, which is fantastic. Hopefully you've all got a copy of the programme, which covers this evening and what we're doing on Sunday down at the Leisure Ground, which of course we hope to see you at as well. So the sequence of events for this evening is sort of on page 6. It's a fairly, the timings look precise, but the key bit is we light the beacon at 9:45, in line with everybody else around the nation. So without further ado, we will start the proceedings. And as you can see, you have on your programme on page 7 the opening proclamation, which has been read out by town criers across the nation. And Romanby at the moment we don't have a town crier, but vacancy, you know, if you feel like applying, please let me know. So until then, you'll just have to have me. Today in our nation and throughout the Commonwealth, we are celebrating our glorious Queen's Platinum Jubilee. Elizabeth, the second of that name, our most beloved sovereign and head of the Commonwealth for 70 years. How apt that this should be the platinum anniversary of her accession. Platinum, that most noble of metals, more precious even than gold. And so it is in honour of this unique occasion that beacons will be lit this evening throughout the United Kingdom, the Channel Islands, the Isle of Man and the United Kingdom overseas territories, and in all the capital cities of the Commonwealth. Let it be known, in proclaiming this tribute to Her Majesty the Queen on her Platinum Jubilee, that we are one nation and one Commonwealth. God save the Queen.
God save the Queen.
It now gives me great pleasure to introduce Councillor Dave Atkinson, who's going to do the dedication to the flagpole, which is highly appropriate as it was his idea. And we installed a new plaque at the bottom of it with today's date on. Right, so Dave.
Thank you. On this 70th anniversary year of Her Majesty the Queen's accession to the throne, we thought it appropriate to formally dedicate our new 2022 flagpole to mark this historic occasion. We have already flown several flags this year, including the Union Jack, the St George's flag of England, and of course the Ukrainian national flag, as a mark of solidarity and respect for our beleaguered friends in that country. And as you can see this evening, we are flying the official Platinum Jubilee flag to mark this special weekend of celebration. We will fly flags for key events and milestones in our community year going forwards, and in dedicating it in this way, it will stand for years to come to reflect the lifetime of service and example of our Sovereign Queen, Elizabeth II. So, without further ado, it gives us all a very great pleasure to dedicate our new Romanby flagpole, and from this moment henceforth, it will be known as Romanby's Queen Elizabeth II Platinum Jubilee flagpole, and the small commemorative plaque alongside the flagpole marks that moment this evening. Thank you.
Right, we hope you're all sitting comfortably, because now Sue and I are going to tell you a story. It won't take long, and it's entitled 70 Years of Romanby. We're going to take it in turn. I'm going to do the 1950s. So, February the 6th, 1952, George VI dead read all the headlines around the world, and with that, Princess Elizabeth was thrown with the full glare of the world upon her into the spotlight. And Britain had a new queen for a new Elizabethan age. Her coronation would not be until the following year in 1953. 1952 in Romanby was not unusual for a community and a nation still emerging from the horrors of the Second World War some 7 years before. The 1951 census lists Romanby as having a population of 1,486, and that compares to 6,500 today. Living in 467 houses in the parish. That compares with 2,750 today. Many of the housing developments in Chantry Road, Newsham Way didn't of course exist. The main hub of Romanby was the Green, Ainderby Road, Harewood Lane and Boroughbridge Road. Agriculture and industry were the main employers of the working population, and the wall around the Memorial Garden that a lot of you are sitting on this evening was built in 1952 following the removal of the steel railings in 1942 taken for the war effort. And in 1956 it was agreed that the land on the Green should be transferred to the parish council from the church and designated as common land for the pricely sum, I'll have you know, of £5. Also, in 1959, all the new houses that had just been built on Broomfield Avenue, if you live there, were allocated electric street lighting. Quite a new concept. The new Romanby Primary School was opened on its current site in 1953, replacing the old school that stood just here, which had opened in 1875. Some 90 children enrolled in 1953, and this has of course steadily grown across the subsequent 70 years. The old school continued in use as an annex for the next 20 years or so, and of course in the 1950s, when Her Majesty first came to the throne, you could leave school at 15. And of course, and a lot of us will remember this, you got a third of a pint of milk to drink every day, and a school dinner in 1957 cost a shilling, or 5p. In 1955, the average price of a new house was £2,050, and only 10% of the houses in Romanby in 1955 had a telephone. The cost of a gallon of petrol went up from, and this is of course quite topical at the moment, went up from 3 shillings in 1950, 15p, to 5 shillings and 4pence in 1956 at the height of the Suez crisis. It'll be interesting to make a comparison there. Average weekly wages went up from £5 in 1950 to £9 in 1959. Food rationing from World War II had continued into the Queen's reign. Sugar and sweets were not taken off ration until 1953, and meat and cheese rationing finally finished in 1954. National service also came to an end at the end of the decade. Men aged between 17 and 21 were expected to serve in the military for 18 months to 2 years. The system was phased out in 1957. Now, in 1955, just to finish off the 50s, if you lived in Romanby, 45% of the houses had a vacuum cleaner, 20% of the houses had washing machines, 10% had a fridge, and about 14%, as we said, had a telephone. The BBC as the only channel was used by many here in Romanby to watch the coronation in 1953 because tellies were just so expensive. ITV was launched on the 22nd of September 1955, and Churchill retired as the Queen's Prime Minister in April of 1955.
The 1960s. According to the 1961 census, the population of the UK was 52 million, compared to 68 million today. In Romanby, there were now 670 households with a population of 2,059. The 60s was the last full decade that we would use the old pounds, shillings and pence system, although the 5, 10 and 50p pieces began appearing in the late 1960s. Although Romanby homes were becoming better equipped in the 1960s, many people still lacked what today we think of as basic essentials. By the end of the 1960s, 80% of homes had vacuum cleaners, 60% of homes had washing machines, 30% of homes had a telephone, 60% of homes had a refrigerator, 90% had a TV, but these were mostly rented. And by the end of the 1960s, approximately half of our residents had a car. Oh, for those days. Houses on Hambleton Avenue were built in 1960, and in August 1960, the plans were first published for the large housing development around the Pennine View Newsham Road area. It would take some 3 years in total, finally completed with roads, streetlights and road names, and adopted in 1965. The road at one side and the footpath down the other side of the green were built during the later 1960s, costing a total of £4,000. This was following extensive consultation with residents and after the ownership of the land had transferred from the church to the parish council. At this time, there were no play areas for children, and as the parish grew, the parish council negotiated with the school in 1967 to allow the school playing fields to be used by parish children during school holidays. This remained in place for several years until Broomfield and Ainderby Road areas became properly established. The old school continued life as an annex to the main building during the 1960s. The Golden Lion pub was in place on the green, and not forgetting the Station Hotel, where beer cost 2 shillings and threepence, that would be about 12p, or in today's money, £1.70 a pint. Keg beer was king. Lager sales in the 1960s were non-existent. Milk from our dairy was 9 pence a pint, about 4p, and industry, the railways and agriculture continued to be the main employers of our 1960s Romanby working population. In the wider country, France vetoed our entry to the common market in 1963, and Harold Wilson was Prime Minister from 1964 to 1970 after several years of Conservative government. The death penalty for murder was abolished in the UK on the 8th of November 1965, and we won the World Cup on the 30th of July 1966. And finally, away from Earth, the first man in space was Russia's Yuri Gagarin. He completed one orbit of the Earth on the 12th of April 1961 in his Vostok 1 capsule. And of course, the USA's Neil Armstrong became the first man to set foot on the moon on the 20th of July 1969.
Right, the 1970s. Flares. Oh, flares. With the advent of the 1970s, which saw in 1977, of course, the Silver Jubilee of Her Majesty, life in Romanby continued as normal, with the population growing. As a response to this, the first discussions took place about the creation of a play area behind County Hall, which we all know as Broomfield Park. We were in discussion, our predecessors, with the Rural District Council, which was the predecessor to HDC. In 1972, with a £7,000 loan, the parish began work on making Broomfield Park, and it was finished in October of 1972. The Chantry Road development got underway during the 1970s, which saw a big upturn in our population. By the end of the 1970s, the Romanby population was now 3,540, which had gone up about a third. In the autumn of 1973, 18 trees were planted down near the Packhorse Bridge, including those willow trees and copper beeches down there. Some of those were gifted as memorials, the rest were funded by the council. Also of note was the automation of the 2 railway crossings in Romanby. The one down here, near where the dairy was, of course, and the one on Bridge Road, and the demolition of the signal boxes. This happened in July to September 1974. And in 1975, permission was granted for the building of what is now Northampton Town Football Club, down at the bottom of Ainderby Road. Her Majesty Silver Jubilee was in 1977, and Romanby had a large parade through the village and street parties to mark the occasion. And we have recently published some old cine footage that we discovered. In the country, we went decimal on the 15th of February 1971, ending centuries of usage of our old currency system. And in 1973, we joined the EEC, or the Common Market. And of course, in 1979, Britain voted in their first female Prime Minister, and Margaret Thatcher would of course drive much of what happened in the next decades for all of us.
So we come to the 80s and 90s. The final 20 years of the 20th century saw massive changes in how we live, work and spend our leisure time, making daily routine almost unrecognisable from the early years of Her Majesty's reign. In 1980, the average house price was £22,000. By 1990, it was £62,000, and with Romanby's population now hitting 4,500, there was clearly demand. The parish council developed Ainderby Road Leisure Park in the 1980s in response to this growing community. It was provided to us in 1986 on a 99-year lease from Hambleton District Council, and by the end of the 1990s we had plans in place for the pavilion and changing rooms to support the sport pitches there. In the early 80s there was a push from Northallerton Town Council to merge Brompton and Romanby with them, but this was fiercely resisted by councillors and residents alike and rejected in 1982, and it's never come up since. In the mid-80s, British Rail started to make extensive changes to the railway station, which of course is in Romanby, and much of the old architecture was lost forever. Housing developments in Broomfield and Romanby continued in the 1980s and 1990s, filling in the land from Thirsk Road, Mill Hill Lane, Broomfield and the Oak Tree Drive area, further increasing Romanby's population. By the time of the millennium, Romanby's population was 6,051. The old Sunter's Yard started to be filled with houses in the late 1980s, and provision for Romanby children grew to the 7 play parks we have now. In 1986, our Packhorse Bridge, built in the 16th century, became a Grade 2 listed structure, protected for future generations. In 1988, we put concrete driveways in across the green to try and protect the grass while providing vehicle access for the residents. And in 1989, the planning application to develop the pig farm at the bottom of the green for housing was received, much to the delight of those with more sensitive noses. In the wider world, the Falklands War was in 1982, the miners' strike in 1984, and Tim Berners-Lee developed the World Wide Web in 1989, sparking a revolution like no other. The Channel Tunnel opened in 1992 with Her Majesty present, and Hong Kong was handed back to China in 1997. For the millennium, Romanby residents did their own thing, and Her Majesty was present at the Millennium Dome in London for a New Year's party.
And so to finish the 21st century. So Romanby's population has held steady at about 6,400 for the last 10 years, mainly because there's been no large developments. The last big development was of course Ainderby Gardens in 2004-2005. The dairy, which had been on the site for decades and employed generations of Romanby families, closed in 2010, And of course, as we all know, we've since lost our post office and shop in the centre of the village, but there might be some battles to be fought on that yet. This memorial garden was redeveloped in 2015 and rededicated in 2018 as part of the 100th anniversary at the end of the First World War. And we put in a wildflower meadow down at the Ainleby Road Leisure Ground using some legacy money from the old Gala Committee that they gifted to us in 2012-2013. So of course, the closer we get to the present day, the more familiar events, the more familiar the things are. Her Majesty's Golden Jubilee in 2002 was marked with private events here and parties. In 2012 for the Diamond Jubilee, we did our first party in the park down at the Leisure Ground. And of course, we're repeating that this Sunday at the Leisure Ground for the Platinum Jubilee. Her Majesty the Queen has seen enormous change in her 70 years on the throne, and here in Romanby life too has evolved, but we remain one community, distinct and together. The pandemic, of course, with all its fear and heartache, brought out the very best in many people, just as Her Majesty has and continues in her own way to represent the very best of us. So therefore, we are truly proud to be Romanby. Thank you very much. It now gives me great pleasure, and this is being performed across the United Kingdom, to introduce on my left Liz McDougal, who will play a piece that has been specially commissioned across the whole of the Commonwealth for the Queen's Platinum Jubilee at the Beacon ceremonies this evening. Liz. Brilliant, thank you Liz very much, thank you very much. Right folks, so all that is left for us to do at 1:45 is to light the beacon. Just before we light it, literally few seconds beforehand, there'll be a short bugle call. So we've got, because we are running very slightly ahead, this clock here, no surprises, a little bit fast. So we've got a couple of minutes, and then we'll light the beacon. You'll know we're about to light it when you hear the bugle call, so we've just got to wait now for a couple of minutes. So please feel free to talk amongst yourselves.
Very fetching. Very friendly in Romanby. Very.
Hello, Mrs. Bradford. Salut les cheese.
Yeah, thank you.
Well, you've got to be the other side. The other side waved more. Come on. No competition, but they waved more. I wonder why. No. They waved more on the other side. Oh dear! They did. They waved more on the other side.
I love it.
There's no escape. Mark too. Curtsy.
God save the Queen! God save the Queen! God save the Queen! God save the Queen!
Oh, we're 2 minutes away.
anybody who's not come here tonight, we're going to wake them up now. 3 cheers for Her Majesty the Queen. Hip hip! Thank you all very much for coming. We're going to leave this for about 15 minutes or so. You're more than welcome to take pictures. Be very careful, please, with the cabling and the gas cylinder, obviously. And we look forward to seeing as many of you as possible on Sunday, if you can, down at the leisure park where we've got live music, free hot and cold, and soft drinks and activities for the kids. It's in the programme that you've got. Thank you.
Sold out.
Anybody want to take a selfie? Look at it. Look at it. We all do it. Oh!
I've got the evidence.
I've got the evidence.
You've got the evidence.
I champagne. God save the Queen. It's amazing. She's very good. Amazing.
Yes, good. Come on Sunday.
Nice to see you. Nice to see you. You all right? Good.
Right, I'll see you down there in a see you about there in a minute.
How's it going? All right.
Are you alright? Yeah, full of twigs and hay, and you know how to used to do it.
Behave yourself.
Changed.
Honestly.
We're live.